Hi, if you're anything like me, you want to create big change in your community. You've got a great cause, great ideas, and great projects. You just need more people to get involved and help you make it happen. If you're like many community organizers, you may think you just need to do a better job of marketing to the general public. Make more posters, send more emails, reach more people, build your social media audience, and raise awareness. And if you're like most community organizers, you don't have time for that. Here's the good news. You don't have to. You just need to be more strategic, more personal, and more creative. I'm Rebecca Sanborn Stone with Community Workshop. We're a small consulting firm working across North America, helping people create the change they want to see in their communities. I'm here today to introduce you to a new way of thinking about marketing and community engagement. Instead of trying to reach more people, we'll focus on reaching the right people. Instead of general awareness, we'll focus on how to encourage action and behavior change. And instead of trying to convince people to do what you want, we'll focus on creative ways to remove barriers to action and offer incentives that matter to them. This strategic approach is based on a process called community-based social marketing. That's a big term, but we'll walk through 4 simple steps that will help you create a specific, personal, action-oriented approach and get real results. Let me start by telling you a story. I live in the tiny town of Bethel, Vermont. We have 2,000 people, and when COVID-19 hit this spring, we suddenly had many more people in need. We also have an aging population, and volunteer groups like our food shelf were run mostly by retirees who suddenly needed to stay home to stay safe. The board needed to find new volunteers, and fast. They tried the same methods they've always used to publicize the food shelf. Flyers hung up around town asking for volunteers, or asking people in their existing circles. They struck out, and they assumed that people just don't want to volunteer these days. Fast forward 6 months. By fall, the food shelf had a celebration and planning workshop on the town green with nearly 30 new volunteers. Every shift is filled, and they even have new volunteers building a website, painting signs, applying for grants, and making big plans. How did they do it? Not by broadcasting their message far and wide or issuing a general call for volunteers. Not by posting on social media or paying for advertising. Instead, they walked through the 4 steps of community-based social marketing. First, they clarified what outcomes they really needed at that particular moment and what specific actions people would need to take. For the upcoming week, they simply needed 2 people to staff a 2-hour shift. They didn't need huge numbers and they didn't need ongoing commitments. They just needed the right 2 people to say yes to a one-time commitment. Second, they clarified who they really needed to reach. People who could volunteer safely, which meant younger people with lower COVID risk factors. People who had enough time to volunteer, so those without kids or existing volunteer commitments. And people who were available during the food shelf's afternoon hours, so people with flexible jobs or remote work. Third, they identified barriers to action and success. Many things were getting in the way of new volunteers signing up. Younger people weren't likely to know about the food shelf or see the posters. More generally, nearly everyone was nervous about COVID risks, and most people were reluctant to make any long-term commitments. The daytime hours were a barrier for people with 9-to-5 jobs. Next, the food shelf identified incentives. One of the biggest incentives to volunteer anywhere is simply being asked. Last, they made a plan to find and reach people in their target audience, to ask them for a specific action, and to overcome the barriers to action. They thought about specific people who fit the profile of an ideal volunteer. People who knew them personally reached out with a direct email or phone call, sharing the urgency of filling slots and feeding people that week, and information about COVID safety. They invited people directly to sign up for just one shift, and volunteers did. The food shelf director repeated the process the next week and the next to fill upcoming slots. They removed another barrier by starting to offer evening hours, which allowed more people to volunteer and more people to access the food shelf. They found that people who volunteered once were eager to come back and to invite more friends, and soon they had an active roster of volunteers. You may have a very different challenge or situation. You may need to engage far more than 2 people. But the strategic process I just described can apply to just about any situation where you need people to take action or change behavior. Get involved, sign up, donate money, wash hands, mentor a child. It's all about getting really specific about what actions you need right now, whom you need to reach, and then getting really creative about how to reach people and overcome barriers. So try thinking through a particular engagement challenge yourself. Use the worksheet or the template I've provided to guide you. Better yet, invite others to talk it through with you. Start by getting very clear about the outcome you want. Be as specific as possible. What outcomes do you need right now? Now get clear on the specific actions you need people to take, and then think about the very first step. Next, identify a target audience, the right people to take that particular action. Use the worksheet to develop an audience profile. Think about who these people are. What do they care about and believe? How do they spend their time? Where do they get news and information? If you don't know, find someone in that group and ask them. You can also look for general audience research online. You want your audience to be quite narrow. If you need to reach multiple audiences, then walk through this process separately for each of them. Third, identify the barriers that might prevent this particular audience from taking your target action. Information, time, money, transportation, beliefs. Now, how can you help overcome those barriers? What incentives could you offer to help people take that action, or what would make it easier? Now it's time to make your plan. Decide how you're going to reach your audience. Print materials, social media, a phone call. Decide who the best messenger is, and think about what messages will resonate. Specifically, what action are you asking people to take? And don't forget to convey why that action and your cause really matter. As you start planning your strategy, think way beyond traditional marketing approaches like posters and social media, and think about making it as easy as possible for people to take action. Do you need people to fill out a survey about a new neighborhood park? Rather than sending an email, how about setting up a pop-up park right on the street and catching people as they pass by? Planning a card writing campaign? Rather than expecting busy people to buy a card, find a stamp and remember to mail it. Try handing out pre-stamped cards at the grocery store, or partner with a local restaurant to put them on tables so people can write while they wait for food. Organizing a cleanup event or building a playground? If you want parents to volunteer, then be sure to offer childcare and kids activities. Or better yet, design a fun, kid-centered service event that the whole family will want to attend. You're almost ready to put your plan into action, but there's one more important piece of community-based social marketing: experimentation. This approach is all about learning from what you do. Maybe your message won't resonate. Maybe people won't take action. As long as you learn from that experience, you can adjust your approach and try again. But that means you need to think like a scientist. Before you launch your effort, think about how you can evaluate whether it works, or even test 2 potential options. Good luck getting strategic, and I'll leave you with one final quote for inspiration from Simon Sinek. What good is an idea if it remains an idea? Try, experiment, iterate, fail, try again, change the world. If you start thinking strategically about your work and how to engage the right people in your community, I'm sure you will.